Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I want to talk to you for a bit about LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. I've played through the entirety of the prequel trilogy's levels at this point, and I gotta say, it's very unusual the direction they've decided to go with it, because the LEGO games are always known for having a heavy mix of puzzling, platforming, and a little bit of combat on the side. And they've actually changed up the mix of these features in this new one, because there's actually very little in the way of the sort of puzzling you'd expect from these games. And I actually kind of appreciate it, because it always felt a bit awkward to me how in the LEGO games they managed to try and fit in puzzles where they really didn't fit. Even in context, it was hard to justify certain puzzles or jumping sections or what have you. But they've actually streamlined the entire process here in the Skywalker Saga. In fact, they've changed up the way the levels work completely. So, the way it works is, you've got these big open worlds now, and they kind of feel like Super Mario Odyssey levels, if I had to make a comparison to anything, because you've got your major levels that are set up via these objective prompts, but most of the time you'll be wandering around in these areas looking for loose Seto Kaiba bricks that let you get upgrades. You go around collecting studs, finding side missions and stuff like that. And they are also the area where half the story takes place, because most of the time you'll just be getting from Area 1 to Area 2, but you'll also be doing it, like for example, in The Phantom Menace, where you rescue the Queen and take her to the hangar. That takes place on the overworld now, instead of it being its own separate level. And then all of the set pieces are the big levels, like for example, being chased by the fish in The Phantom Menace, or in Attack of the Clones, where you're chasing down the shapeshifter assassin, or in the case of attacking the Trade Federation battleship, the Gungan battle. You get what I'm getting at, right? All the big set pieces have their own levels now. And it means that all of the puzzling and the platforming, at least the majority of it, are saved for outside of these levels. And I think this actually works really well. It keeps the game going at a really decent pace. The individual episodes themselves are a fair bit shorter, but at the same time, it took me 9 hours to get through the entirety of the prequel trilogy, so getting through the original and sequel trilogy is going to take a fair bit more time. So, it's actually got a fair amount of content still, but it feels less like it's being padded out a bit. Like it's being just, you know, they're adding stuff in order to add on more puzzles to make it feel more like a LEGO game, and it feels more natural as a result. The levels feel that much more enjoyable to play. Not to mention they've still got all the old mainstays, like you've got mini kits hidden in the level, you've got the stud counter, which of course you can buy the stud multiplier and basically just ignore that now, which is nice. Although, as far as I'm aware, there's no code to actually give you that right from the beginning, which is always a little bit of a disappointment. There's also individual challenges for each level. You get 3 of them, and the game doesn't tell you how to do them from the start. But this is another thing that I actually like about LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, because there is a lot to do in this game. There are 1,000 of those bricks that you have to go and collect, whether they be from the main levels themselves, whether they be from the open worlds, whether they be from doing the missions. And so as a result, you might find yourself wondering where the bloody hell something is. Whether it be just a random brick off in the corner somewhere, a mission, a collectible like the Wookiee that wanders around, the golden ships that wander around in the space sections. And what happens is, if you have 30,000 studs to spend, you can go and buy a rumor which basically tells you exactly what you need to do in order to actually get that. And I really appreciate this system, because it lets you wander around freely. It lets you find the stuff that you're capable of finding. And when you do, when you are out of stuff to go find, I should say, and you're just looking for those little things that are left over, you've probably got more than enough studs at that point to buy the rest of the rumors and know exactly where you need to go. It makes perfect sense, and for a collectathon like this, I'm more than willing to give it a passing grade for it, because it just works. It's just a really clever way of going about your business. Only kind of let down by the fact that a lot of these are repetitive, It's mainly just very simple platforming challenges, and there's a couple of other things as well, like some special missions that you can do that they hint at the overworld and all that. But the majority of bricks that are going to be lying around are simple platforming challenges, and I can understand why. You don't want to make it too hard for the kids, and since they let you start from whatever movie trilogy you want in this game, they need to have everything be like beginner accessible right from the beginning. If you picked the original trilogy and it was a bit harder because they expected you to start from the prequel trilogy, for example, that would be a bit of a kick in the teeth. But no, it doesn't work that way. You simply have everything being a bit simple from the beginning. And it's never completely brain dead. You always have to think at least a little bit about what you have to do. And there's always some strange ways around certain puzzles, like being able to build up a stack of objects or stand on top of a mountable vehicle and use that to skip a little bit of the challenge. That is possible in a lot of situations. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And it's kind of neat in that sense. But yeah, it can be a little bit simplistic, and if you're not into the sort of Mario Galaxy sort of repeating-ish sentiment, where you've got stars that are in very similar positions and require very similar challenges to beat in order to get to, well, I would probably suggest skipping this one, because there's going to be a lot of what feels like quote-unquote repeated content. Although, if you're a fan of bad puns, every time you pick up a unique brick, it always ends up giving you this stupid pun. It's also worth noting that they've split off everything into character classes. So you've got protocol droids and astromechs that can only activate certain things. Protocol droids can speak every language, although you can get rid of that limitation with a few studs and one of the data cards they've hidden around the place. There's the Jedi and the Empire that can do Force-related stuff. You've got bounty hunters, which are required for certain missions. You've got the scavengers, who are the only ones who can shoot the nets that apply to the walls. And honestly, this doesn't really make that much of a difference, although I will at least say, don't bother going around the galaxy too much. Like, if you run into a brick that you realize you can get, go get that brick. Otherwise, just kind of wait until the end when you've got all the character classes unlocked, because I played through the entirety of episodes 1 through 3, and I didn't even unlock the scavenger class, which is what's required to get to certain bricks in the overworld. It's just very clearly like they've put a climbing thing there for you to go and grab as a scavenger, and it's otherwise completely simple. And that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. But it just makes the entire thing incredibly simple, and so as a result, and there's really no way around it. There's no, like, building up things in order to get up there. There's probably one of those weird shortcuts that they found. Like, since you can't kill children in this game, you can instantly, you can hit them forever, though. So you can constantly be swinging away at them, and if you do your combo right, you can float up forever. You can do that. But I'd rather just wait until I have all the classes unlocked and come back later in free play. There are also supposed to be some more free play challenges out there, which is something that I'm not entirely familiar with. But yeah, I haven't actually managed to find any of them yet, if you couldn't figure that out. With that said, though, when this game wants to be a spectacle, it is an absolute spectacle. The fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan is just an absolute joy to look at. In fact, the entire game is a joy to look at. Like, Jesus, they did such a good job with this game's graphics. It's kind of unbelievable how good it looks. All the effects are fantastic. The way that even the figures are detailed, the environments, while mostly a bit too real, whenever they get the Lego in them, it does stick out like a sore thumb a bit, are just a bit... it just looks fantastic. It really does. And they've put so much effort into the animations and the effects and the sounds and the sound design. And even the idle animations and conversations you can have between characters if you get them out during, like, the free play mode is just kind of insane. The amount of just overall detail they've got here is incredibly well done. And I'm just forever impressed by the amount they managed to sneak into one of these games. And being someone who browses prequel memes on the regular, they have memed the shit out of episodes 1 through 3. Like, my God, man. There is so much going on here in relation to just memeing the crap out of episodes 1 through 3. There's even a Taken reference if you have Qui-Gon Jinn and you keep him near something that he's capable of maneuvering long enough, he'll say that he has a particular set of skills. And even the voice actors are just, like, obviously they didn't get all of the regular voice actors. The only one I recognized, I think, is Temuera Morrison. I'm pretty sure that's him. I know it's not Frank Oz. I could probably be mistaken in thinking it's Frank Oz, but it's not Frank Oz. But, what was I saying? But yeah, Temuera Morrison it's gotta be. Like, no one gets his voice that close. When he does Commander Cody, the Clone Troopers, and Jango Fett, of course. That's gotta be his voice, right? So, it sounds like him, which makes it sound a little bit weird against all of the obviously not, but they're trying to duplicate the other voice actors. But honestly, they sound fine. Like, when the chips are down, they sound absolutely fine. They do the job more than well enough, and not to mention they manage to sell the comedic lines. Like, for example, I am the Senate. Hiya, Senate, Mr. Jar Jar Binks! I heard that line. Goddamn line. I get the feeling that's going to be all over prequel memes. But yeah, just the overall presentation of this is excellent. The way all the models are constructed, the way the figures are constructed, the way the effects are done, the sound design, the voice acting is absolutely fine for what you might expect. And when the game wants to make a spectacle, it makes a spectacle, and it looks really good doing it. With that said, how's the gameplay? So, there's a bunch of different kinds of gameplay. Because not only are they willing to give you, like, on-rails sections, not only are they willing to give you proper shooting sections, proper puzzle sections with the astromech droids and the protocol droids, not only are they willing to give you proper brawler sections with the Jedi, but then they'll just go completely out of left field and give you the Boonta Eve Classic with pod racing. So, they keep the variety up a lot, and it does a lot for what feels like the value of the game, because just every time you go into a new level, it'll be something different, and it'll probably be something at least somewhat interesting. And I haven't found a bit of the gameplay that hasn't worked. Like, I have enjoyed the Jedi gameplay a fair bit, because the brawling is very simple. You've got 3 buttons that will do different melee attacks. They all do about the same amount of damage, so there's no focusing down on combos like Devil May Cry here. And the higher you get, the more of a studs multiplier you get. And it's just satisfying being able to swing between all of these different enemies, throwing out different moves, pulling out your force moves from time to time. And then you've got the shooting, which is satisfying because when you hit someone in the leg, they'll hop on one leg. When you hit someone in the helmet will pop off. But at the same time, it's not as satisfying as with the Jedi. It's not as satisfying as with the Jedi, mainly because they will only be doing the same amount of damage per hit. Meanwhile, you've got the blasters, which will do more damage when you do a headshot. So you always want to be hitting the head, but at the same time, it's not too shabby just to run around, be swinging your pistol everywhere, and just shooting everything that moves. That manages to be enjoyable in its own right, and of course, you can always swap between characters if you want to play Jedi a bit more, because I don't think there's been a section in this game yet where it's mostly been like, what's the word I'm looking for? Bloody Jedi and blaster users together at the same time. And so, most of the levels do revolve around that combination of things, but it works. It's satisfying. The animations are smooth enough and deliver enough of an impact in order to actually be enjoyable. All the enemies don't... Well, the problem is that the game's too easy. So you're going to hear me saying that over and over again when it comes to each of these different kinds of gameplay scenarios. The game itself is just too easy. And even then, when you upgrade your characters using studs and bricks, it makes them even more hardy and do even more damage. And I played through the entirety of episode 1 and 2 just saving up studs for the stud multiplier because I didn't feel the need to really get that much in the way of upgrades. And so as a result, it makes it just, it makes it feel just way too easy just to begin with. With that said though, the game does have proper boss fights, and this is kind of where the co-op situation comes in. Now, I haven't played the game in co-op, but I know how the old games used to work, where it would give you either two characters that were good at damaging the the boss in question, or it would give you a situation, and it would change that situation up a bit so that you could actually make it work. Like, for example, at the end of episode 3, where in the original LEGO Star Wars game, it would actually have one player be Anakin and one player be Obi-Wan. So you could give yourself, you could do that fight, and it would actually have an alternate ending depending on who won, which was a really nice little thing going on there. But in this game, they've kind of preset it so that player 1 is always going to be like Obi-Wan in the fight against Anakin. Anakin is going to be controlled by the AI, and then the other player is going to be like a droid off in the background, or just some random guy who can't do damage but might be able to draw some attention for a little bit. So you find yourself in this situation where one player will be doing all the work and the other player will just be sitting in the background, and that's kind of disappointing. It's also kind of disappointing you can't do online co-op, because I wasn't able to actually like get anyone in on this, but you know, I can kind of understand why they've been so used to not doing online for so long. Trying to do it on what's arguably their biggest game on a new engine may well cripple them, but at the same time, it is still a bit of a disappointment. With that said, there are also, of course, not so much the gimmick levels, but the set piece levels, whether it be the quick tower defense that you do in episode 1 when you're the Gungans fighting off the Trade Federation, where you're firing the bombers into the massive approaching waves of enemies. It's a simple mechanic, but they make it really viscerally satisfying by having dozens of droids blow up in one go. Same thing with the pod race, where you've got these quick time events that you have to do in order to keep your pod in one piece, and the rest of the time you're actually having to aim for boost pads and rings and mini kits. And it works. It's simple, but it works. Same thing with the space combat, where you just need to generally point in the direction of the enemy, fire at will, and hope that you hit the enemy. But they do give you that little circle indicator, which is like, hey, you can aim here in order to be constantly hitting all the time. So that's fine. It's simple, but the spectacle is great. When you're in episode 2, the fight with Jango Fett in the Slave 1, I refuse to call it the fire spray, is its own level, and it works really well because of the spectacle. They've got like homing missiles that you need to dodge. It's got the charges that spread out in that wave, and they look fantastic. And the sound is done so well as well. It's so satisfying to be able to try and dodge that while constantly trying to take shots at Boba Fett, or if you're like me, going around trying to get as many studs as possible, because the space levels are absolutely fantastic for that. And so as a result, the space levels end up being fun. And it's all really well done. Pretty well polished, and it just works for the most part. Like, a lot of people have been, well, not a lot of people, but I noticed a few reviews saying things like the game's a bit buggy, but honestly, I haven't noticed it. I haven't seen any bugs in the time that I've been playing. The one thing that I do really want to complain about, though, is the game's FOV on the camera. It is so far up your ass that it's kind of unbelievable. I actually got motion sick. I played through the entirety of episode 1, but by the end of it, I was feeling so motion sick that I was off for the entire rest of the day. It is not good. I had to sit like a few paces back from my monitor in order to actually make it tolerable to play through the rest. That's kind of unforgivable. But at the same time, I imagine someone's going to mod the crap out of the game soon enough to actually fix that. Because the game's entirely single player, so there's nothing wrong with cheating a little bit in order to make the game a bit better. But I really do wish they would add an FOV slider. They've got accessibility stuff all over the place. In fact, the default is having your health automatically regenerate, and you don't lose health when you fall off the side of the level, which is fine in and of itself. But it feels like the game is designed around that. So if you want to play old school LEGO Star Wars style, where that wasn't a thing, and you have to pick up hearts in order to regenerate your health, there's basically no hearts going around. So the game feels a lot harder than it realistically should be. Now, I said the game is too easy, and I meant that on the default settings. But when you turn off those settings to try and get a bit more of a challenge, they don't spawn enough hearts to compensate. Although when you start upgrading your health, things will probably start getting better in that regard. But I digress. It feels a bit weird to turn those off and not have the game feel like it was designed around that. But, yeah. Where was I? Right, gameplay. Cutscenes and comedy. It's got the comedy. It really does. And it's not just the over-the-top slapstick that the LEGO games are known for. Although that is there, and that is there in spades. Poor Jar Jar gets it so badly in this game you would not believe. But I actually kind of love Jar Jar in this game because they only exaggerated his character slightly, but it still feels so over the top. But at the same time, I really don't think it's too far over the top. And of course, they've got all the stupid gags, like one of my personal favorites has to be, "You are on this council, but we do not grant you the rank of master. Take a seat, Obi-Wan." And then he opens up the child's desk that's in front of him, and there's a coloring book with crayons in it. It's such a stupid gag, but I love it. The only downside is that we all know mumble mode, and you can turn it on by default. They don't require you to unlock it. They were implying that you were going to have to unlock it during the trailers for this. But no, it's unlocked by default. You can turn it on by default. But a lot of the physical gags are just simple slapstick that don't need any sort of context. There are a couple of jokes that help. Like, for example, Emperor Palpatine being so obviously evil. The coloring book gag that I just said. But there's a few of them that just kind of don't work without the voice acting. So I recommend just leaving it on because, frankly, the voice acting is good enough anyway. It's nice that mumble mode is there as an extra. But yeah, they were never going to make that work. They were never going to make a bunch of extra mumble mode gags in order to actually make that work. But yeah, it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little bit disappointing that mumble mode doesn't work as you would expect from the last games. But honestly, you don't need to turn the voice acting off. It's fine. It actually helps. They've got a few good lines going on in there. Like, the Misa Jar Jar Binks line would not work. It would not work in just the regular Star Wars games with the mumble voice acting. So, yeah, just leave it on. It's worth it. Trust me. God, what else do I have to talk about? There are space sections, but there's so little to do in them that it feels kind of weird that they exist. Sometimes you'll get gold ships running around, but they're so easy to chase down that it almost feels like a slog. There's comets, but they kind of have the same problem. There's a couple of unique little events like shoot the targets, fly around at a high speed. Of course, those are easy, but at the same time, at least they feel like a somewhat of a challenge. And they're just so small that they feel kind of insignificant. I just kind of want the ability to go and do a dogfight whenever the damn hell I please, but the game doesn't seem to want to do that. You do have the ability to go capture like huge ships, and it creates this entire thing where you have to go around hitting the weak points on ships while taking fire from their escorts, but I haven't actually managed to get to them yet, so I can't tell you how they are, and they're probably not repeatable, so that's kind of one thing I miss about this game in general, really. The ability to just cause a fuss. I've played through the entirety of the prequel trilogy, and I haven't found anything like the Cantina, where you've got multiple characters running around, and if you just, like, throw a rock in a general direction, it devolves into a all-out brawl. That's very hard to survive. Those were always really fun to do in the original games. So I don't know why they didn't do it here, and I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't. Maybe that exists later on in the game and I just don't know about it yet. Maybe you can, like, take an evil character, take them into a good character area and try and fight them all off, but it wouldn't be the same. It'd be lovely if they added it as, like, a post-launch piece of free DLC. Like, it's just a location you can travel to that lets you set up your own battles between all of these different characters. And they can have hundreds of models on screen at once, so that would be absolutely fantastic. But, yeah, I don't know, man. What else is there to say about it? There's a lot of options. I'm playing the PC version. There's an absolute ton of options. And the performance has been absolutely fine. All the way up to, like, one particular level. The Droid Factory in Episode 2. That runs everything at, like, 20 FPS when everything else is an almost solid 60. That's a bit off. I don't know what the deal is there. But at the same time, that is also a level where they let you do, like, you've got C-3PO and R2-D2 on one side of the level, Anakin and Padme on the other, and you can swap between them at any time. So there might be a bit of a performance overhead going on there. If that's the reason why, I can understand, but man, it's a bit of a surprise when you see it the first time. Otherwise, the performance is absolutely fine, though. You can use controllers. Controllers are entirely rebindable, which is a really nice touch. There's plenty of gameplay settings, as I said, including accessibility. So the game is entirely accessible right down to the little teens. And of course, you can play local co-op, and you can do that on the PC version with Steam Remote Play, although I didn't get the opportunity to test how well that works. One other thing I suppose I can complain about, because it's me, I have to complain about something. I wish someone would tell me my place in shutting the hell up whenever I boot up the game. I'm so annoyed at her voice every time that happens, because it makes it feel like the Skywalker Saga is all about her, when it's not. And I absolutely still hate the sequels. I'm yet to see if this game can make the sequels tolerable, but I'm not holding my breath. God, is there anything else that I need to talk about? Just running it through my brain while the gameplay footage goes on in the background for you. I don't think there is. Just based on me playing through the prequels. The gameplay is, I'm not going to call it shallow, but it's not deep. And it's certainly easy. But it's still satisfying. It's still fun. It's still a spectacle, which is everything that the LEGO games have always been good at. And so as a result, I enjoy it. And of course, you have the ability to turn the difficulty up by turning off some of the just assists and what have you that it's got going on. You've got tons of content to be going through with the 9 episodes. There's a lot of stuff hanging around in the overworld, even if a lot of it's a little bit repetitive. The comedy is on point. It's not just slapstick. They have a lot of really good but stupid writing that makes me that always makes me giggle or laugh at just how stupid some of it is. And that's kind of what I want from the LEGO games, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. The gameplay is also kept varied by the fact that they've made it so that the major spectacles of the levels now, they don't have too much in the way of the out-of-context puzzle platforming anymore, and they change up the gameplay a lot, whether it be the on-rail sections, the space sections, things like the Boon to Eve Classic, which are just a completely different race section. All of these different things, just, they change it up a lot. It's all really polished. At least from my point of view, it's all been really well done. I've run into very little in the way of bugs. The only thing I really have to complain about is the fact that the field of view is so low that I have to sit really far back from my computer in order for it not to make me motion sick. But yeah, it's all otherwise really well done, and it looks and sounds amazing. They've done such a great job with the models, the effects, the voice acting is... It's not the original trilogy, the sequel trilogy, or the prequel trilogy, but the voice actors do a good job. They sell the important lines really well, and it's just really, really well done. And I've enjoyed it. I've genuinely enjoyed all of the time that I've spent playing it. I've enjoyed the 8 hours it's taken me to get through the prequel trilogy, and I want to play the rest of the game. So, yeah. Really well done, guys. A bit too easy. Please fix the FOV. Please shut up Ray on the title screen. And it's a bit disappointing that Mumble Mode doesn't have a bunch of extra gags for it. But everything else is just so well done that I just can't help but recommend LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. They spent a lot of time polishing it, and it's clearly paid off. And I'm more than happy to recommend it to pretty much anyone, honestly. I mean, obviously, you're probably going to want to have seen the movies, but it's, like, I have seen very little in the way of movies, and it would be amazing if even I hadn't seen at least some of the Star Wars movies, you know? You're probably going to want to have seen them. Hell, you're probably going to want to have been, like, on the internet to get the most out of it. Because they make references to Taken and to memes. And they even, like, add a few of their own, like, ridiculous twists on all of it. And it all just works. And it shows that this is just a labor of love. They have put so much unnecessary detail. And it all works. It all works. So yeah, fantastic little game. Few problems with it, of course, but they weren't enough to stifle my enjoyment. Not much, anyway. It kind of sucked that I was a bit off for the rest of the first day I played this, but oh well. Hopefully, either someone will fix that via a cheat engine mod, or they'll give you an option to up the FOV on the PC version. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.
Commander, head to that communications tower and send a signal. We need additional fire.
All units come in. We need an LA-AT to provide supporting fire. ASAP.
Pathetic clone.
He means you, Cody. Your move. So uncivilized.